Yeah, no problem.
Okay, I'll just say a few words. I don't want to waste your time. After the last summer, I traveled to watch you working in the national team, with the national team of Canada. I came back and shared my amazing visit with some of my colleagues. And I wanted them to hear also some of your ideas about coaching, about planning. I was hoping that we could bring you to give us a clinic in Israel, but unfortunately, the circumstances is a little bit different now. But anyway, it's a great pleasure for us to host you and to give you the stage to hear some of your amazing ideas. Take your time.
Okay. Okay. Well, first I want to say hello to everyone. I hope that you and your families are all well. I might have some problem with internet eventually. Like, just if it breaks, just let me know, wave or something. It's a little bit inconsistent here. When I talked to Sergey, he gave me some different ideas to talk about, and I try to give an order to the things that I will try to address. And if you want, you can ask questions maybe during, or you wait at the end. Doesn't matter to me. What I'll try to do to give an order is to talk a little bit about first my background a little bit, and then a little bit what I did with the Canadian team, and then do a little bit of a parallel with the Canadian team and the club system, because I think most of you are coaching clubs. So, and then if you have questions, I mean, we'll see how long that takes. I stumbled upon volleyball as a player by accident. I was actually in high school and was trying out to the basketball team, and thought that I'd been cut, but it was a mistake. I didn't get cut, and so. But in that meantime, I went to volleyball because I love sports. So I went to play volleyball, and I stuck to it. So. And had a career as a player in university in North America. Most teams, most athletes go through the university systems for the high level, and then went on to national team and played 9 years in the professional leagues. And then in 1993, I decided when I stopped my career, I went into coaching. And I was very fortunate to have Charles Cardinal, which is a very well-known periodization expert, teaches at the University of Montreal, and as a mentor, and that really helped me kind of and learn to really follow the process and learn to build a process. And that's what I'll talk a little bit about, how I did with the national team, to give you guys an example, because that's the example I have. And a little bit after, how it's kind of the same process with a different context in club. And I'll explain why later. So what I did is I prepared a little bit of a PowerPoint, and I won't bore you with that, but let's, I got to share screen here, I think. And get this going here. So I found this in the Harvard, I think it was in the Harvard Business Review, and it's about life. It's about like what we face as people that continuously work in competition. We all do as coaches. And I thought it was pertinent to a little bit to what I'm going to give you a little bit of background on the national team. I want to use this to give you the background. So when I was in France, working in Paris as a professional coach, I worked with the French national team right up to Athens Olympics. And parallel to that, obviously, I was following up on our national team in Canada, because I was always attached to that program, being a member there, and obviously being my country. And we actually played against Canada a couple times with the French national team. One time was in the World Cup, and one time was at the Olympic qualifier. And so I game planned against them, studied them, and was able to know a little bit of what we lacked, what we were okay at, and what we lacked. And that's what I use. And I'll show you a little diagram later on how I composed the idea of the Canadian project over time, and using our realities. So the first paragraph is about obviously living in a more competitive environment. I don't know if it's more or less competitive. I think it's always competitive in sport, and we always have, to try to outdo our adversaries. Part of the problem that we've had in Canada was that as a program, we always tried to catch up to other people or try to imitate other programs. Problem is that our reality, domestic reality, didn't allow us to perform the way the Russians or the Americans or the Brazilians did, just because our reality was so different. And again, I will explain it later. So it was hard to kind of try to at least catch up, even maintain, or even try to innovate as well. So when I in 2006, knowing our strengths and weaknesses, first thing we needed to do is build a system that would allow us at least to bridge somewhat the gap between the better teams in the world and us. We could compete with team of our level, but we wanted to compete against better teams.
כאילו יש לי תוכנית של לימון שהביאו לי.
I'm sorry. Okay. So like it requires obviously the right learning environment, the right kind of people, the right learning process. The problem is that for having the right kind of people, staff or athletes, you need to form them. And so we needed to get a period of formation for my staff, not only for our athletes. So I'll get down to what we did a little bit later. How can we keep, so once we were able to establish the base systems and educate the people and have kind of the right kind of people, then we needed to really accelerate our what's going on here? Somebody's into the, can you guys see this? Hello?
Yeah.
Somebody's fiddling around with the presentation. Okay. So the part that we wanted to get to was eventually to be part of innovators and not always catch up to other systems. So 2006, knowing what I knew, we established a system. I don't know if you see here in this area here, is that there was too much of a gap. The nation was too big. Sagi, can you see this?
Yeah, we can see it. Yeah.
Like all the marks in the. Oh, okay. Yeah. So somebody has infiltrated the meeting, eh? Somebody's fooling around with the...
מישהו מצייר שם, נוימן, מישהו נכנס ומצייר על השקפים.
Glenn, you have an options to erase that.
Okay. Because it's not from my presentation. I don't know where it came from.
Look in the share screen options. Should be an option to erase that.
In which option, sorry?
In the share screen, should be option to erase that.
Okay.
And then you can, the host of the meeting can avoid other participants to draw. Yeah, you can
Oh,
speak.
okay. So you share participant stop me wrote a note. It's the announcement, I think, maybe. This. Oh, okay, I got it. All right. Is that okay now?
Yep.
Okay. Just to, so, you know,
There
knowing
is
what
one more in the left
yeah,
side.
there's one right here. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. I think we got it. All right. Here we go again. Okay. So when I took the team, and after what I knew, basically what needed to be done, not only at the team level but at the domestic level, was to create a system. And that's what I always found that the US did well, was that they had a base system, or at least they had teachings that were kind of uniform for the nation. You know, Mark Carl McGowan was a big part of this with and they were able to, everybody was able to reference the same thing. So what we did is we created offensive system and defensive system, just to create a set of references and guidelines for coaches and players across the country. And what we did too was, and that was important, is like, here's the training philosophy that surrounds it, because here's why you're going to train defense, is why you're going to be training setting, is why you're going to be training attacking, because it fits within a system. And then we established performance indicators, and the indicators were very much related to the international game, so that what are the benchmarks we need to reach to be able to play at that level. We also needed to establish IST role. The IST role is basically the integrated support team. Is basically your sports psychologist, mental coach, your physical preparation, your medical staff, to get them to work seamlessly, to work together with the common philosophy. This wasn't the case when we got there, and the players were not used to have this kind of support. So then we needed, from a domestic point of view, because the country is so large and so difficult to attain, and in Canada we're arranged with 10 provinces that have their own kind of they have power over education, power over sports, so everybody can have their own programs. So we wanted to have a uniform structure. So what we did is we invited the teams and provincial teams, where we could touch most of the 14 to 18-year-old athletes to high performance camp. First, we had a little bit of money, so we brought them there and started teaching all the Team Canada system, our ways of training. We would get the specialists to meet all the teams and the players, explain what their role were, so that athletes would know and coaches would know what Team Canada wanted. What is your common training philosophy and systems and stuff, so that people would, when they would come, they would know. It took us about four years to get that done at different levels. So these at the bottom here are the areas where we could disseminate this information, and those were mostly summer programs. We also created a full-time training center. For 10 years, Canada had this in the past years, a long time ago, and it enabled athletes to close the gap, especially physically, and then correct them technically once they leave university to go to the international game, because there was such a huge gap. So this had been abandoned for 10 years, and I brought it back at that time because it was a need. I thought it was a need. And we really wanted to train the athletes, get them stronger, get their structural tolerance to be being able to handle more training hours, more training reps, more volume of training, because in universities, this wasn't the reality. In university, the reality is from September to about March, and then they're over. In the US, it's a little bit longer, but in Canada, it's very much shorter. So the volume of training is much lower, let's say, than your same age athlete in the club in Europe. And we needed to make bridge that gap, and we used those full-time training center to do that. We used our junior and FISHU programs to do that as well. So some players that were still in university would come in the summer to the national team center, and then if they weren't in the FTC, if they were getting back to school, at least they would get that block of training with us. So the second thing that we did from 2006 on was establish our playing philosophy. Canada was a team that tried to swing their way to victory, mainly. A lot of serving, a lot of serve hard and hope for the best. There was no kind of no block defense philosophy. They were okay offensively, but they were too porous as a team, and they could win some games against even good teams at time, but they couldn't perform regularly. And so one thing that we did is we started at the beginning by limiting errors. Like guys couldn't just serve, as hard as they could, and there was times where they needed to be smart about their serving, and then we trained a lot with our block defense philosophy. Their question? No. Their block defense philosophy, and work the points, and we got pretty good. We got pretty good, especially in the aspect of block defense. We got better and better. Our back row skills got better. So,
can you please share your screen again? Coach.
It's
if
not...
you can share, share
you cannot see?
Now I can see only you, not your screen.
Sorry.
Okay. No, it's my mistake. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thanks for telling me, by the way. Thank you.
Coach,
yeah?
If you can make a full screen, the slide. It's barely you can see what happened.
Okay. Hold on.
I think it's in the PowerPoint. You have to do it.
Now, or sorry about that. You should have told me before. Where do I do this now? In the PowerPoint, eh?
Probably down on the bottom bar. You have a full screen. Make it full screen.
Okay.
Click on Use Slideshow on the top left.
Use slideshow. And the thing comes again. Somebody's fiddling with the computer.
Perfect.
Okay. Can you see?
Yes, we see also the...
Get those marks, okay. Yeah. Okay, sorry about that again. And let me know if I make mistakes. I'm not great at presenting this stuff. So if you see the second slide, this is where we... oh, man.
סגי, נראה לי אתה יכול לבטל את זה אם אתה מזמין.
Wait, גלן. לא, זה אני לא יכול לבטל, המזמין זה יניב.
לא, אני מנסה, אני לא מצליח, זה מישהו שנכנס פנימה ומנסה לעשות לנו את זה, ואני זורק אותו כל הזמן.
אוקיי.
מי זה? מה השם שלו?
זה עין שם, ואני זרקתי אותו החוצה עכשיו, רק שאני לא יודע אם הוא יכול להיכנס עוד פעם.
גלן, unwelcome the guest.
I have to do it from my part?
No, the host can do it. He's doing it, but he's getting inside every time.
יניב,
כן?
תחפש אופציה לעשות waiting room, וככה הוא מחכה ב-waiting room ואתה פשוט לא מאשר אותו, תחפש את זה.
לא, אני רואה אותו, זה מישהו שאני זורק אותו כל הזמן, אני מקווה שעכשיו הוא לא יוכל להיכנס יותר.
לא, אם לא תאשר אותו, הוא לא יוכל להיכנס בכלל, אתה צריך לעשות את האופציה שאתה צריך לאשר מישהו כדי שייכנס.
זה פעם הבאה.
Okay, let's try again.
Let's try.
You want to just keep going?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So, you know, like the second part was, if you look at the middle of the screen, I don't have access to my mouse there, but playing philosophy limiting errors was a big thing, like at the beginning, and we would, you know, like basically was trying to create trust in the system, get the guys to understand that, you know, if we go that way, we'll get better, and then we can reach a higher level. Like trust is really hard to get. As soon as guys, you know, and we needed small wins for that. At the beginning, we didn't get that many, and what we relied on was basically performance indicators, like having statistically to show improvement, although it didn't translate to victories. You could see there was clearly some improvement, especially on defense. And the odd thing is we were digging well, and started to dig way more than we ever did, because one of the biggest weakness Canada had was his skills and their back row skills especially. So they were good, big at the net, were able to do things at the net, but, you know, as soon as the ball would go past the net, it was. And so part of the problem that we had is that as we start getting, so after a year or two of practicing this, we're getting better at digging, but we can't transition kill. And through those measures, we were able to say, okay, well, next step is to practice transition offense, you know, and you know, high ball management, and by 2010, we started to have some results, especially at World Championship, by defeating Serbia in one of the at a World Championship in an official competition. So. And that helped also for us getting a little bit more funding and stuff, because we were starting to beat top 10 teams. We had started to compete better against those teams, but we needed 1 or 2 wins to just kind of confirm that growth. And so as we got better, like we started increasing the philosophy for young athletes stayed the same. So basically, the whole process would go for athletes entering the national team. They would go through the same process. But for senior athletes who got better, then we wanted to be a little bit more innovating. Also improving serving was a really weak part of the Canadian game. We needed to make an improvement in that area. Our high ball, like our out of system play, started to get much better. And as we got more funding, just because results got going, you know, kept coming, then we started to invest a little bit more in science. We got a little bit more. We were able to invest in vert and work on different analyzing volumes of training, especially for the international game. You know, what was needed. You know, guns for all the technology that we have now. Like basically, we didn't have at that time, and it helped us make the analysis and make adjustments to our training philosophy. So I wasn't. At the beginning, this plan was asked from me from our main fund provider, because I would explain how we did things, but I couldn't picture it. Like I had it all here. So this is how I created this for them to understand, because they were mostly people that weren't from volleyball, and so couldn't understand, you know. And then I had to bring up some performance indicator and statistical analysis that they could understand, so that, you know, they could decide on how well they could provide for us, or how much money they could provide for us eventually. So I needed to show them where the improvements were done, what they meant in relation to the international game. So we started looking at servers internationally. Here's where our servers are speed-wise and stuff like that. Here's it went also for like how high does players jump, you know, attack efficiency at the international level, and so on, you know. And then we were able to give them comparison and show them that we were getting a little bit closer to competing, because basically on the podium, this organization wanted us to reach, you know, reach the Olympics was their main reason of funding us. So it's not easy because, you know, not easy to get there in the first place. And then I really wanted to be as honest as possible with them. So we had a pretty good relationship, and we got good funding for. Well, this is kind of where, you know, this is how I was able to develop the program over the time. It took a long time. It took, I would say, we skipped like two Olympic cycles before the 2008 cycle and the 2012 cycle. We didn't qualify until we did in 2016. So it was a long process. It was something in mind that I had. Like when I initially took the team, I told main fund provider that I would take up to 8 years to rebuild the program. And so it took about that time to it take a little bit less, let's say, to be able to perform against teams at the high level, but to get consistency for the team to play against the best teams in the world, then it took at least that much. And for me, it's something in Canada, we cannot, we're not a big volleyball country. We don't have tradition. We don't have a league. We're a university-based system. So we need to, we cannot at any time relax, you know. So for example, right now, if I look at the national team right now, the team is okay, but for the next cycles, we're going to be weak in the middle. So we need to be looking, you know, in our depth chart and how we're going to make sure, because the problem is with university system is that you lose players along the way, either because, you know, we have an excellent receiver attacker that's going to be an engineer. So at one point he's going to be choosing to go and be an engineer, or he might choose to keep going and hopefully play pro and then keep with the national team, but we have no guarantee of that. So do you have any questions on this? No? We're good?
Yes, on the chat, please.
Okay.
You have questions on the chat.
On the chat? Okay.
Yeah.
Where's the chat? My chat. Okay. Two questions. Can you explain a little more detail how exactly you got all relevant parties in line to the common? Good question. Was this philosophy your own personal perception? Did a team of people comprise it? The whole system. Sorry, the whole system was created by me at the beginning. It's not a very complicated system. You guys, everybody works kind of the same way. It was just really trying to give, again, for me, it was mostly getting a set of reference to the nation and to people that would come, because they had I had a kid, for example, that came in, and so basically we have the blockers have to train to stop the ball at the net, either score a direct point, slow down the ball, or redirect the ball into the defense. Now your second set of players, the defense, basically have to recover the ball that's the blockers let through. So you need to train to be good at defending, and then we need to be able to relaunch to counter attack. So one kid told me, that makes sense. So, for him was, if I block, I block. I don't block in relation to something else. And that's fine. I mean, we want the players to say, okay, I've got to be really good at stopping the ball and trying to block it. But when you're going to deflect it, we need a digger in the back row. So you're there to take an area. If you can score direct point, that's fine. But if not, then, if you can put pressure on the hitter and then he hits into our defense digs it, and a lot of people didn't understand that relationship. And just because I think it wasn't explained. So most of it was me, but with the years, a lot of people helped me set up a PowerPoint presentation and the whole system where we disseminated this information to the nation. So I wasn't alone, obviously, in doing that. Long-term plan, were you given a 10-year stretch by the federation in order to try to mandate manage? Yeah. So at the beginning, I remember my interview for the team. My first interview for the team was, how are you going to get the team to be in the top 4 in the world? And basically, I told them it was impossible. I said, at this point, it's impossible. Here's why. I gave him the reasons why. And I said, here's what can be done, and here how much time it's going to take. And I told him that it would take at least 8 years because of this. So, and at the beginning, for my first interview, I didn't get hired, obviously, because they didn't tell them what they wanted to hear. But second time around, we came to terms. I said, listen, it's going to take that long. And if you want, I'm willing to come in, but you need to give me the time. So, and they did. So we had an agreement that way. And then I was able to start the project in 2006. How do you practice during the year? Training camps, regular meetings? Is this question about the club system or with the national team?
With the national team, I think, Glenn.
With the national team.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe what I can do is take you down to, why can I not? I don't have access to my mouse for some reason. I can't seem to escape to get out of the, can you tell me how to get out of the presentation?
Escape.
Escape, but it doesn't want to let me escape for some reason.
Try enter a space or Control F4.
No, I don't know why. Control F. No. I'm stuck there.
Next time, don't use Apple.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, listen. Let me, because I can't. I don't have control on my mouse either. I can't see my mouse. So. Okay, I'm just gonna see if I can escape from. Can I? There. I can show you. Here's a. Okay, now where do I go back to?
טוב, איוש. אז תנסי עכשיו להמשיך. זה אמור לעבוד.
This is a typical plan. Like, I don't know if that answers the question. This is a typical plan. For example, this was my 19, and this is an annual plan. This is demanded by the main fund providers. So we have to present an elaborate plan. But I usually do this when I'm in the club in the winter and then prepare for the summer to come. And this represents kind of the global aspects that we need to work on. For example, so if you see here, this is just the dates of the weeks. This was 2015 and 16, and with the different competitions that we have. So this is the summer mostly here. So you got, like, in that case, it was World League. 2015, we had Pan Am Games in Canada. training, World Cup, and then Norsika, and then with the Olympic qualifier, which won major competition. And what I do is I usually start with that, and I define the importance of the competition. So like here, for example, in that case, World League was important, but I gave it a moderate importance. Pan Am Games were at home, and the providers wanted us to medal. So, you know, I gave it a D-men déterminante, because I wrote it in French, but decisive competition means that, you know, there's no you guys can see this, right? You guys can see the screen?
Yes, we
Yes,
see.
yes.
Yes.
All right. Basically, yeah, so this is a decisive competition just because we wanted our main fund providers, they was in Toronto and they wanted us to perform at home and get a medal. So I put it as decisive. So my training was all done in relation to try to perform there. Also, World Cup here was decisive because it was an Olympic qualifier. Two teams would make it out of that competition. And then another qualifier in January, and then another qualifier in Japan. So those are all decisive competitions. And if you look here, we did qualify in this qualifier here, and then went on to play World League and then the Olympics, which is was a decisive competition as well. So depending on the importance that you give to the competition, you can decide on the volume of work and the type of work that you will do, even if you're on the road, for example, in World League. So, so this is what I would give. Mostly here, I would give importance to strength and conditioning, and mostly skills, you know, and what we're going to be doing. This is a general plan. I get into more specifics, obviously, for each microcycle or each or the mesocycles that I will use 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and then decide on what we're going to be working on. Also, it also depends on the age of the athlete and his level of experience and stuff. I'm always thinking, I always keep a big group of athletes just because in Canada we need to make sure that we bring the next athletes up for the group that will come after. Don't want to wait till the end of a cycle like the Olympics to try starting with a new team, because it would be impossible. The growth of our athletes is much slower than for post-university athletes than it is for a European athlete that's used to training much more and starting often at a much younger age. So this is the program I drafted for this summer, and this is a little bit more. I couldn't put, because of the crisis with the COVID-19. What I did is drafted just scenarios, and one of the scenarios is not knowing if our players will find clubs this year. We might have players in the center, so I put both scenarios here. And right now that's where we're at. And then obviously there's not much we can do from a sport skills perspective, but we do stuff. Right now the players have programs at home. Our mental performance coach is working with them. The guys do what they call check-ins by small group. Okay, our medical staff, our nutrition guy, Eric, has been working with the guys on what to eat during that time where they are more at home, and obviously they have to be a little bit more careful. But that's where we're at. The only thing we know is that the Tokyo Olympics have been postponed to next year around these dates. But right now we're just moving with time, and we don't know when we're going to be and if we're going to be resuming to a normal kind of schedule. So let me just go back to chat. Okay, that explained a little bit of how to practice during the year, training camps, regular meetings. This gives you an idea. Okay. Can you explain training philosophy and any difference between developing young players compared to seniors? Yes, it's big. Well, the training philosophies are based for me on the system. You know, the system is basically your process, like how, you know, you got a goal and what you set your goal, but what you put in place to reach that goal is your systems and your process. And really that's what I focus on all the time. Doesn't matter if it's club, if it's, so for me, everything, the training philosophy is basically what your system is. So what is your block defense system? Do you have a system with just a simple read system and it's free for all and everybody does whatever they want? Or do you have a system where, you know, we have with Atkas, with my Turkish team, our blocking system is very, very simple. But, you know, we want to execute it well, you know, just dedicate to your right, dedicate to your left, and then some options, some commit options, some commit also with the middles releasing to their right and releasing to their left based on calls maybe coming from the bench and stuff. But there's a few calls and that's it, you know. So we do train our players to become good blockers and to learn to play within system. Want my middle to be, for example, the person in charge of making the calls and usually relating to the bench if he has to. Sometimes I let him take the lead, or sometimes if I need to give him a little bit more information based on what we get from the scout man, then we'll do that. I also get my libero to work a lot, especially he's on the court, at leading the defense and helping on. I have a very experienced libero in Joao Bravo, a Brazilian player, and he does that very well. He has a great view of, knows the game plan by heart, and is able to help my younger players. So younger players, obviously, the two things that I focus on is one is structural tolerance development. So I have like two very talented, 17 years old, but they need, if I try to impose a volume of work that the senior guys are doing, probably will end up with some injuries. So what I do first is profiling their level, like, you know, where are they at in relation to the level that we want them to be, in what skills. And then and when I say skills, I can include, like, you know, mental skills, cognitive skills like read and react, what he's able to see, what he's not able to see, how does he manage pressure, etc. But I do spend a good period of time on what they call structural tolerance, which is getting muscles, ligaments, and developing the capacity to work without the onset of injury. And this is very gradual for me. Like I'm very patient in that way, because if we push too hard, then usually, you know, like you could run after big problems. And the problem here that I have in Turkey is the two players that are super talented are highly solicited by the junior team, by the senior team, the junior team, and they want them for all the competition. So they don't have a great understanding on how patient they have to be to develop this young athlete. So if you have a good athlete, make sure that you take the time. And sometimes it's just good to get them out of the gym, especially in the summer period, if you have time, after a recovery period, to give them a block of training where you can really develop all their physical capacities and that capacity to train more and be able to sustain more. I think, there's, okay. Any more questions?
Glenn, can you talk a little bit about how do you build your team in the club? What is your philosophy in terms of picking the players?
Yeah, I'll stop sharing there. Basically, for me, it's very much the same approach as with the national team, in the sense that first thing that I'll do is meet the guys. So, you know, we have a rotation of players, like every second year we change players. players that want to make a little bit money. We always have young players at Arcas. It's always a mix of younger players and older players, and we try to maintain it that way just because we have to keep budget under control, and some teams have more money, and so we'll lose them. So I always explain, I'll go through all the systems. They're very similar in system because I want to make sure that it's clear. Some of the guys will have been there for a couple of years, and they will know that I'll go through this meeting and stuff. And so at the beginning of the year, I'll do that. I'll also will let them express themselves as far as rules are concerned. I'm not a guy. I want discipline because I think more disciplined we are, the better the faster we will advance. Instead of like always having to catch one guy, say, hey, you're going the wrong way, like come back this way, and another guy, if you end up doing only this and managing problems, then it's really hard to move forward because you're spending too much energy on that. So what I do is let them express themselves on the rules, like, what's acceptable, what's not, and let them express themselves, and mostly let them decide on what's acceptable. Is it acceptable to be late? Is it, is it acceptable to have, bad attitude in practice? Is it, and let them express themselves, because in that sense they can police it themselves, like, and because they've agreed to certain rules, then they'll police them themselves usually. That's always worked well for me. You still have to leave a part of you're still the leader of the team. You're still the person that they need to relate to, and sometimes you'll still have to orient them. They're young players, and they'll still make sometimes some wrong decisions or wrong behaviors, and we're humans. We're people of emotions. So during the season I'll have to intervene, but mostly I try to let them police that by themselves. To compose my team, just because of the reality that we have here at Arcas, we have kind of a straight budget, and they don't want to go. So they don't want to spend like big clubs and go back big stars. So what we do is I always try to think about 3 years ahead. I always try to see and have a depth chart on each position, and then decide on what I'm going to bring this guy up, as a receiver attacker. I want him to be in place because I think this guy will leave probably. And then I want this guy to be ready to move in. We're allowed here 3 foreigners in the league, and then the other ones have to be Turkish players. So it's super important. Also, the other thing that I do is I try to, depending on the level of maturity of my Turkish players, strategically I'll put certain foreign players in key position. Just because there's position like setting, opposite. This year we had a young opposite. He was very good, but next year he won't be here. So just having, and like I have Bravo, for example, as libero, and Bravo is a very, very skilled player. So very good libero, like very good passer and receiver and stuff. But the most important is that he's a real leader, and he's 40 years old now, is very respected by the group. Has a great view of the game, so it brings a lot of stability, and it gives me a lot of support. So we were able to compete and have a good season. We came second in regular season with a team that was quite young this year, and mostly I think is part of it is the talent that I have. Obviously, I have talented athletes. And second part, I think, is the way the team was composed and having these key players in key position. But that's my reality, my context, and this is the way I'll function when like, again, I'm always looking 3 years ahead. Like always, every year we'll go back to my depth chart and, okay, which Turkish players from our young teams can we bring up, and that will become a key player in a certain position, and enable us to not have to spend so much, let's say.
Do you have
You
enough
guys still there?
players for the high level?
Sorry?
Do you have enough Turkish players for the high level?
We're okay for now. I think we're okay for 2-3 years. We got to look in our, we've got some good kids, and we have a good system at ACAS where we develop the kids under, and so we're able to provide, stability in certain positions now. We've been, we have at least for the next 2 years, I would say we're okay. And
yeah, but I speak about the league.
now,
you have a big pool of Turkish players.
No, and the problem with Turkey is that you end up having to pay a lot of money for players that are not like super great. So and the problem is like at ACAS, the players are under. I think they stay with us until the age of 23, and then they're free to go. And we don't get anything kind of in return. So for the development we do so, and they usually go because they get more money, and from the major clubs. So that's why we have to develop our own. A lot of the best players are all in Turkey are probably players from this club here. So I'll just check the chat again. There was another question, I think. Players for shorter and smaller than the rest of Europe. What do you think we should do and what we should focus on? Outperform, defeat all the bigger national team. Yeah, good point. Good question, actually. I like that question. I think to be able to perform like it, I think it's all about, you guys know your culture. You guys know, you guys know, it's important to know what your culture is, and then to define the goals. Okay, wanting to compete with the best teams in Europe is one thing. How to do it is a different thing, and then
מה קורה נוימן? ארדואן התערב לו?
לא, הוא אמר שיש לו שם בעיות עם האינטרנט.
Sorry. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes. We cannot not see you.
Yeah, we hear you.
I think it's my internet went off.
Okay.
So I put it on my phone. So sorry about that.
Okay.
I think you have what you have, and the big thing, I think skills is always a good thing. Like if you're able to have a higher, especially with smaller team, obviously the more skilled you are, the more capacity you'll have to be able to run maybe a little bit more complex system and compensate for the lack of size. Otherwise, if with a shorter team, obviously I think that this is what, Japan's a good example. They've been performing well and having like shorter players and stuff, but I think that's the way to go. Is I don't think you can, if you don't have the skills, then it's difficult. Also, to make some of those skills a little bit more sophisticated. For example, serving, and can be a very good skill to orient your game. Your transition hitting, if you're a better defensive team, can be an area that if you improve a lot, then it could lead to better performance. For me, with Canada, it wasn't okay. We have bigger players and stuff, luckily, and we had a good generation. But I still see the game. I still feel that we need to develop the game globally. Like I want to have a team that can defend, that can attack, that can block, that can serve. because I find that I've done that, and I do this actually with all my teams, is that I take each position and run an evaluation of each skill. So for example, if you take position 1, you take a diagram, you go position 1, you say serving, blocking, defending, attacking, receiving, and you put 6 of these, and then you rate each skill of your player, and then decide, then it orients you in the work that you want to do, and it tells you how weak you are in certain area. And for me, this is the way I look at it. And then, for example, if I have an opposite that's, okay, he's a good attacker, he's a good blocker, but he doesn't defend anything, then I'll try to say, listen, if you get 20% better at defending, then it's maybe 2 out of 10 chances more of us scoring a point. And then I go about it for each position. Obviously, your setter, you want to see setting as the major aspect of his game, but if you can be a little bit better on blocking, a little bit better on defending, then whoop, you're going to be grasping some extra points there, and as a team you might be able to perform better. This is my approach. This is also my approach in club, you know. How involved are you with Coaching Education Canada at your club team? I'm more involved with it. I've participated. The question is, how involved are you with coach education in Canada and at your club team? I'm involved with both. We've developed, here in Turkey, we found that there wasn't a lot of access to documents, so we had to create our own documents at Arkash. What we did is develop a whole long-term athlete developmental model that we translated in Turkish. Where we're able to, you know, from what we do, you know, at a physical level, from a 7-year-old to, you know, the adult, and each steps, what we wanted our coaches, and we ended up getting our coaches to participate quite a bit into, you know, as we disseminated this system, we needed them to get involved, and it wasn't easy because in Turkey, you know, like the rational, you know, the girls are okay, but the men don't go to school for very, very long. So the rational thinking is, you know, they tend to react to everything very emotionally, very defensively. So we need to really take our time to develop and make sure that this is good for you. You know, if you do this, you're gonna be a better coach. You're gonna get our kids to be better, and so on. You know, but the learning process is much longer, than say than educated teams countries where they have more elaborate education system. With the women, having talked to Giovanni Guidetti, he said there was way less of a problem, but it is a problem also the way we coached here. So at the level in Canada, I was part of writing some technical books in Quebec, where I'm originally from, in French. I did a part on match preparation, you know, scouting, decision making also, and this was a big part. And then I did a lot of clinics. Although since I've been more full time in Europe now and less time in Canada, I do a little bit of clinics in the summer, but not that many. I'm not involved as much. Any other questions? Decision making, good question. That's a great question too. How do you coach decision making? This is actually a good question, because here we're really challenged with that. There's some players, like I have a player, he's a school kid, Turkish kid, school, going to be an engineer. Very easy for him to work, because, you know, like obviously he's able to problem solve and not things emotionally, or it's just a natural process for him. With the case with foreigners like Bravo, it's not a problem either. With the other players, it's a little bit more complex. First thing is that just telling them why they're playing in a system and to understand that is already a first step, you know, like, and as you train a situation, for example, in decision making, which for example, blocking, then I just stop and ask questions. This is the best way. Like, why did you do this? Why did you make that choice? You know, and at the beginning, there was no answer. Just didn't know. But with time, they kind of start to have a process of decision making where they're saying, "Oh, I made that decision because I saw this, this, this." So say that's good, you know. And it's also one thing that you have to be careful with decision making, especially if you're for example, working with blockers, is that if they make the mistake, is not condemn the mistake, because then they will stop wanting to make decisions. So it's really, really important that you let them go through that process. If you have access to video and video your players, it's also really, really important. You know, if you're able to go back, sit with them, see, here's your blocking, here's your attacking. Why did you make this? Why did you do this? What were you thinking when you did this? And I find that's one of the best ways, is just to question the athlete, establish that communication, listen to what he has to say, and then repeat. So hope this answers the attribute for an attacker. I think for an attacker is not being fearful, you know, and you know, we obviously need to make them skilled, you know, and by developing the skill of attacking, being able to use different shots, being able to attack hard, but not being afraid to take options. Guidetti was always saying that he doesn't, because I asked him about error management and stuff, and he always said, you know, if the girl hits out by this much, but she did take a good chew on the ball, then I won't say anything. But she's chicken about it, bit more questions and wanting to know why she didn't go full out. So I think that's one of the most important aspect. Wrote something about optimal mindset. Can you expand on that? Yeah. So mindset's pretty important, and there's a couple things. Like, I don't know if you've ever read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, which is an excellent book, by the way, for coaches to read. You want your athletes to be in a growth mindset, to not be fearful of obstacles, to want to be able to accept failure and to step up and be able to start over again. I mean, I had in my presentation, I had a little thing that I wanted to show you. I'll just go back to sharing the screen. Hopefully I can go back to it. There. And you know, I found this, I think it was on LinkedIn, but you know, part of the mindset, you know, is obviously, you know, like, this is what we want to see in the growth of an athlete, but this is more likely what's going to happen. And last year I was working with an athlete, blocker, and he's a real physical guy. Was all about attacking. And I said, Marco, I said, you need to become a blocker. I said, I want you to block balls. I want you to deflect balls. I want you to be, because statistically now you're fine on attack, but you know, you're not helping us at all on blocking. And I showed him this. I said, you know, it's going to be tough. It's going to take time because it's a complex. You're going to have to make decision, and sometimes you're going to make the wrong decision. And you know, it's going to be, but you know, if you stick to it, you're going to become a better reader, and then you're going to start getting more positive actions. And so I showed him this curve, and I said, you're going to go through the valley of disappointment. And the joke was, as he said, okay, let's go, let's do it. You know, so we started training, reading, decision making based on what he could see, and there was a lot of information. So it was a lot of during the learning curve was very hard because everything happened so fast, you know. But as he got better, you know, statistically, I showed him the stats, and he kind of accepted to go through that valley of disappointment, or that difficulty, and really became much better. Like, statistically became a really good blocker. And so that shift in mindset was super important, because if he wouldn't have shifted his mindset, it would have been over. Like, he would have just said, no, I just want to be an attacker. Like, this is where I'm comfortable, and I don't want to get out of my comfort zone. Instead, he chose that. And it's the important thing is to really have to really teach the athlete to go through there. And we have a very good mental coach with the national team, Kyle Paquette. It's actually, Sagi, it would be somebody that maybe would be really interesting to have for the coaches eventually. I could talk to him, but it would be awesome. It's really, really, really good. So he explained to us what the guys. He explained to guys that we're all Ferraris, and there's this road with a bunch of potholes all along the roads, and that if, as a Ferrari, you keep going 100% always and hitting the holes all the time, then your Ferrari won't last. And he said, what you need to do is be able to recognize that these potholes are there, and you need to negotiate them so that you don't lose speed and you don't get your car wrecked. And those were those holes that we're talking about. You could reference them as stress during games. They could be stress due to a learning process where you're failing, and the athlete is like bumped against that wall and doesn't see that there's another side to it, that he'll be able to climb that wall eventually and surpass it. So those kind of that kind of explanation was really good for the players, and they really were reacted to well in a very positive way for us with the national team when he came, because a lot of the guys didn't know how to identify these potholes and then how to reconnect to what was important, which is what I'm able to do on the court during the game or in practice, and reconnect with what's important for me to deal with this pothole. So hope this answers that question. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's it, Glenn.
All right.
The guy doesn't have another question, so
no.
I'll thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hope everybody stays safe, eh?
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you very much, Glenn.
Thank you, coach.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, take care.
Thanks, coach.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you very much.